Alright guys, today we're going to be looking at 1.6 valid and invalid arguments. Now, valid and invalid has nothing to do with truth value, and that's going to be hard for you to wrap your mind around at first, but hopefully that I can get that set clear in your head. So, an argument. Apparently I don't know how to work a highlighter today. I'm sorry about that. An argument is a sequence of statements in which the final statement which is the conclusion is asserted to follow from preceding statements, which are called the premises. Alright, so this is going to make more sense as we go through it, okay? So these first two sentences here, if all dogs are mammals, then all dogs are animals. All dogs are mammals. These are our premises. Okay, they're our starting statements. These three little dots mean therefore, but this is our conclusion, is this last statement. So look, we're going to make some notes over here to the side. Okay, so yeah, I'm sure you just heard my dog. She's going to go nuts because somebody just pulled up in the driveway, but it's okay. Is an implicit and. So these are and statements. Okay, so if all dogs are mammals, then all dogs are animals. And we know that all dogs are mammals. So the conclusion would be that all dogs are animals. Okay, so another little thing we want to make note of. This little thing is the symbol for therefore. Okay, we use that in math sometimes. You may even see it in chemistry and other sciences. Okay, you can also can use it for such that, hence, thus, any kind of conclusion leading word. Alright, so now we're going to label these things as P, Q's, and R's. I mean P and Q, excuse me. So the first part, the if part, is the P. So all dogs are mammals is our P. All dogs are animals is our Q. Okay, so then it says all dogs are mammals, so that's a P. All dogs are animals is a Q. So remember I told you that this is like an implicit and. So what this translates to is P implies Q, and P. So these together, and that's going to give us Q. Okay, now this is very, very, very important. An argument is valid if and only if. Okay. The form is true regardless of the truth or falsity of the statements in it. So that means that the form it has to meet a certain form to be valid. It doesn't have anything to do if the statements are true or false. Truth value and validity are two separate things, and that's really hard for people to wrap their minds around. So you say, yes, this is the right form, so yes, it's valid. Regardless if it's true or not, it's set up in the correct form. Okay, so again, the structure of the argument determines its validity. A valid argument is not the same as a true conclusion. Okay? A valid argument is not the same as a true conclusion. All right. Now, let's move up here. So, if a pie is a fruit pie, then it contains apples. Okay? So we have P it contains apples, Q. This is a fruit pie, so that's P. Then it contains apples, Q. Okay, this is the same as this. It's the basic form, okay? And we're going to talk about the different forms, okay, that are valid. But this is the basic form, okay? This argument is valid, although its conclusion may not be true. Okay? Because there are fruit pies that are an apple. You can have a peach pie, you can have a cherry pie, all kinds of fruit. Blackberry, blueberry, strawberry. Okay. So this might not be a true conclusion, but it is a valid argument. Okay. These following forms are valid. Okay. The following forms of an argument are valid. And you need to memorize these forms because you're going to have a quiz where I'm going to give you the form names, and you're going to have to fill in what is the argument. Okay, so you're going to have to fill in this next part. Okay, so we have our little thing here. So if P, then Q, we have P, then our therefore statement's Q. So this is the one that we've been working with. That's called the law of detachment, because you're detaching these two things from each other. Okay? Now, transitivity, if you think about the transitive property that you learned back in like probably 7th, 8th grade, maybe, law of transitivity had three things. So it said if like 1 is equal to 2 and 2 is equal to 3, then 1 and 3 are equal. Okay? So it's kind of like that. So you go, if P, then Q, if Q, then R. So you see how it flows, the chain? So you would put in the conclusion, if P, then R. Because if P is equal to Q and Q goes with R, then P and R can go together. Okay, so that's transitivity. The law of indirect reasoning. Okay, the law of indirect reasoning. This one you got to be just really careful with. Okay, if P, then Q. So they all start with if P, then Q. This one goes not Q, not P. So you can kind of think contrapositive here, because contrapositive is when you switch them and you not them. So contrapositive is like indirect reasoning. Okay, so if they're in these forms, then it's a valid argument, regardless if it's true or not. Okay, so you just have to match your examples to those, and if those are right, then those make it valid. Okay, now these, on the other hand, are not valid arguments. So if they don't work, you have to decide which one of these things it is. This would make it invalid. Okay, oops, sorry, you can't see that. So converse is like converse. What does converse mean? You swap them. So we go if P, then Q. So if they just swap them, then that doesn't work. Inverse. So the inverse is just putting knots on them. Okay? Right? So if they just put knots on them, kept them in the same order, but put knots on them, that's an error. That makes it invalid. So you do not P, not Q. And if you need to put over here that this is not P and this is not Q. Okay, so we're going to do some examples of that real quick. All right, so the best way I know to do this is label your pieces with your P's, Q's, and R's if necessary, and then just find the form. Okay, so if a person is caught driving under the influence, person caught driving under the influence. Okay, cool. Then the person's license is suspended. That's Q. Okay, Jim was caught driving under the influence. Okay, so that's a P. So Jim's license was suspended. That's a Q. Okay, so looking at your forms and your converse and inverse arrow, which form is it? It's law of detachment. Now, when you have your quiz on the forms, you're not going to have any examples. You're just going to have to fill in the 5 things, the 3 valid and the 2 invalid. Okay, but when you get to your test, you're going to have to do some examples. So that's valid. All right, next. So if it's Sunday, so Sunday is P, Terry reads the comics. That's Q. Okay, so Terry reads the comics. So we have Q. So it's Sunday. So that's P. So we look, we see that it's invalid, and it's the converse error. All right. These really aren't hard once you memorize the forms, okay? If a number is divisible by 8, that's P. Then the number is divisible by 4, that's Q. Okay? It's not divisible by 8. Whoops, I should have done it in blue. It's not divisible by 8. So this is not P. Okay? So 60 is not divisible by 4. So this is not Q. So you look and you see that it is invalid, and that is an inverse error. Okay? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay, guys, let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.